Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of LawTech Connect on Litera TV. I'm Adriana Linares. I'm your hostess. And with me today is Don Malarcik. Did I say that right?
Malarcik. You were close.
Malarcik. I even asked, I was practicing before we started, and I even asked in my little interview how to pronounce it. And you did right, Malarcik. I'm sorry. I apologize. Don,
Okay.
it's so nice to meet you. Thanks for
Nice
taking
to
the
meet you.
time to chat with me today. I think I'm going to make it a goal in all of my episodes this year to shout out to Renee Stackhouse, who introduced us.
Yeah, she's amazing.
She's amazing. And so you must know Renee through, is it the Trial College Lawyers?
Yes.
College. I can never get that name of that organization right either.
I know Renee through the Trial Lawyers College. Yes.
Trial Lawyers College. Cool. We
Yes.
do a lot of advertising for them, whether they realize it or not.
Right.
So I had asked Renee, who do you know that practices in cool areas of law? She's given me like 20 attorneys. You're one of them. And that's why we're here today. You specialize, or your area of law that you love practicing is in?
Death penalty.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did you get into that?
Well, I've always been a criminal defense attorney. I graduated from law school in 1993, and I knew that I wanted to do criminal defense work. I knew I wanted to be a trial lawyer. Didn't really have an interest in representing corporations. My parents both retired from General Motors. I worked in a factory, and I kind of saw the soulless corporate world. And I said, I don't want to be a part of that. This idea that I would represent individuals and individuals charged with really serious criminal conduct was something I was drawn to.
Wow. And then how did you get your first case? Were you working at a smaller firm? I mean, were you an associate? You got your first case. Did you go out on your own and you decided this was what you were going to focus on? How did it unravel?
Yeah, I started out as an associate in a small to mid-sized firm, about 12 lawyers. And then my two partners, two best friends at the time, Brian Pierce and Joe Gorman, and I, in 2001, formed our own firm. So the three of us, not knowing what the hell we were doing, just kind of broke off on our own. And we all did criminal defense work. Brian got his first capital case probably in 2004, and I got my first capital case probably in 2005.
Wow.
I had been certified for a while to take those cases, but fortunately, no judge gave me a case until I think I was ready and had been practicing for about 12 years.
And can you tell me about, you mentioned you got certified. So what's the deal with that? Why do you have to get certified to be able to practice death penalty cases?
Sure.
Or represent death penalty cases?
Well, the idea is that you're going to have competent, experienced counsel who has some specialized training and trial experience when they're taking on these really important cases. We've probably all heard horror stories of courts in Texas or Georgia that just pull a lawyer randomly out of the bar and say, you're going to be this guy's court-appointed attorney. And that lawyer not only has no experience in death penalty, but very little experience in criminal law. So the Ohio Supreme Court said, in order to take appointed capital murder cases, you have to meet certain qualifications. Number one, trial experience. I think it's 10 felony one jury trials as lead counsel to be certified as co-counsel on a capital case.
Wow.
In addition to that experience, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah. And in addition to that experience at the trial level, you also have to have some specialized training. So
and where do you get that?
Yeah, the Ohio Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers puts on every November a 2.5-day seminar specifically on death penalty. And it's a great seminar.
Wow.
Even though I wasn't certified, I didn't have the trial experience when I started out. That was one of the first seminars I attended. And, I got to see some amazing attorneys. I got to see some amazing motions that had been filed. And I got to really understand how death is different. So you have to have that training every 2 years, at least 12.5 hours or 12 hours of capital defense training specifically.
And just curious, when you take that training and you're in Ohio, approximately how many other lawyers are in there? Is it a class of 1,000 or is it a class of 10?
Well, I think there's two answers to that question. There's usually a pretty big crowd at this training because it's just fantastic. Even if you're not doing
I was thinking that
work, it's a great seminar. So there's usually 200 or 300 people in the room. Now, Ohio's capital appointment list is probably about 200 people. Maybe 100 are certified as lead counsel, maybe 150 or so are co-counsel.
And then approximately how many cases a year come through where like you said about 100 that are certified for lead. So are there 100 cases a year, or are you getting 2 or 3 a year, or one
Right.
every 2 or 3 years? Just curious what the caseload is like.
Yeah, that's a great question. And over the course of my career, I've seen it ebb and flow. You know, the death penalty is an all-time low right now. In fact, in Ohio, our governor has said that we cannot execute inmates on death row in Ohio because the 3-drug cocktail that the legislature approved has been found to be wholly inadequate and leads to severe suffering, pain, and unnecessary and cruel and unusual punishment. But at one point, our county, the county that I live in, Summit County, Ohio, Akron, really led the state in death penalty indictments. I think there were 11 death penalty cases in about 18 months, which was absurd.
Wow.
Right now, I think there are 2 that are pending. So not only are indictments for the death penalty down, but more importantly, jury verdicts returning a verdict of death are at an all-time low.
Wow.
Out of those 11 cases in Summit County, there was only 1 death verdict, I'm proud to say.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So I don't know if this is a good question, a bad question, and you don't even have to answer this question because maybe you can't. But I just wonder, in your experience and understanding, like you said, you know, death cases are very different. Are you pro or against death penalty? And again, you don't have to answer it. It's just I'm curious from an insider, and especially being someone who spends so much time studying it and thinking about it and either fighting for or against it.
Yeah. I am adamantly opposed to the death penalty under all circumstances.
Wow. And that's why you fight so hard.
It is. Yeah, that's part of it. You know, I went to Kent State University and I am a unabashed tree hugging, electric car driving liberal. That's who I am. Right?
I love it.
So I grew up in a household that was union and democratic and generally opposed to the death penalty. But when I got involved in criminal defense work prior to doing capital cases, I got to see firsthand that this is an amazing criminal justice system that we have, the best in the country, but it's still flawed. And it's run by human beings. And human beings have their own biases, their own prejudice, some known, some unknown. And those decisions help drive who gets the death penalty and who gets killed. So seeing the criminal justice system, even without the death penalty, taught me that this is a flawed system. And then getting involved in capital work reinforced my opposition to the death penalty for a number of reasons. You know, one client in particular was Mark Brown. And I got appointed on Mark Brown's case probably in 2004, 2005. It was one of the first capital cases I ever worked. And I did the federal appeal. It was the first and only appeal of any death penalty case I ever did. I usually do the trial level stuff. So we went through the district court level, the 6th Circuit Court of Appeals in Cincinnati, ultimately tried to get into the United States Supreme Court. And after about 4 or 5 years of litigation, we lost. And the state of Ohio executed Mark on February 5th of 2010. By that time, Mark had spent 18 years on death row. Wow. He was 18 years old when he committed this offense. And the man that I got to know for the last 4 years of his life, up until he was 36 years old, was completely different than the 18-year-old kid who was high, who murdered and was convicted of murdering these 2 individuals.
So hard.
Mark was going to be executed on February 5th. And I drove down to the prison to see him, to have one last conversation with him. And it was horrible. I didn't want to go. But when I got there, I told him, I said, Mark, you know, I feel like I've failed you.
Oh, man.
I didn't do what I needed to do to help you, and it sucks. And Mark spent the next 40 minutes comforting me and letting me know that no matter what we faced in the courtroom, he was grateful for our friendship. He was grateful for my efforts on his behalf. And we talked about his family, and we talked about his girls. And he told me, Don, please talk to my girls and don't let them be bitter because of what the state is doing to me.
Oh.
So I saw firsthand, Adriana, a man who was capable of redemption, capable of love, capable of forgiveness, This man had nothing to do with the 18-year-old kid who committed these offenses. And that taught me up close and personal how pointless, how cruel, how arbitrary, and how ridiculous the death penalty really is.
I'm not crying. You're crying, John.
It was awful. I mean,
it's awful.
and at that point I said, again, I'm not going to do any more appeals. I'm going to be involved in the trial level. I don't like getting involved in trying to fix other people's mistakes. I'm going to make some mistakes at the trial level, but I'm going to have some sense of control. And I've been doing trial level death penalty work for about 15 years. I've represented 16 people who were charged with capital cases, and I'm proud to say I've never had anybody sentenced to death.
Damn, that's awesome. Now I feel much better after that.
Yes.
So, sorry, I get emotional. I don't know. We're humans. We get emotional, and
we're human beings. And this is what we can't run away from. The death penalty tries to strip us of our humanity. It tells the legislature, well, you're not really imposing the death penalty. It tells the jurors, it's really not your decision. The Court of Appeals are going to look at this. It tells the judges, you're just a cog in the machine. And what I have to do, and what every trial lawyer who practices capital work has to do, is make this a personal moral decision for the juror. Because in Ohio, as in any state, one person can stop the death penalty. One person on a jury can say, I'm not going to kill this person. So we have to talk to these jurors and say, what do you want your legacy to be? When your grandkids go and talk about this case and look at this case, what have you done? And what have you done to preserve your values, your morals, and what you want to be remembered as? So my job is to try to bring this decision home and personalize it and humanize my client. Because if we don't have that emotion, if we don't have that human connection to this person in the courtroom, it's all too easy to sign a death verdict.
In my mind, when I hear you saying, here's what I'm trying to do, is humanize this person, make you feel emotion for them.
Right.
I'm thinking about the person who's on the other side of the room from you, who's trying to do the opposite, right? They're trying to dehumanize them and make the jurors, right? I mean, so that's crazy.
It's crazy. It's, there are times when I wake up in the middle of these trials and I think, what am I doing? What am I actually involved in? I'm actually involved in a trial where the folks on the other side, who are usually well-intentioned, are trying to kill my client. This person that I've grown to know, I know his family, I know him, and I'm going to fight like hell as if he was my own kid to protect him. But I have to go into court where not only is the prosecutor trying to kill him, but in order to serve on a death penalty case, every juror has to say, I could sign a death verdict.
Right.
Because if you say, I could never sign a death verdict, I am opposed to the death penalty, you're out the door. You're not qualified to serve. So filled with a room of killers. And my job is to find at least one person to speak to see that humanity, that spark of life that will hopefully cause them to vote for life.
So apart from being a bleeding heart liberal,
right,
and it's just in you, how did you get the training to be able to communicate to people and convince them that your side of the room has a better approach than the other side of the room?
Right. Well, you mentioned Renee Stackhouse and some of the amazing lawyers through the Trial Lawyers College. And it was really there that I learned how to tell not only my client's story, but my story. I first went to the Trial Lawyers College in 2001. And in that moment in my life, I was a complete disaster. I was just a broken human being. I'd been married for 6 years, and I had recently found out that my wife was having an affair. And I didn't know if I was going to practice law anymore. I didn't know if I even wanted to go on, quite frankly. But I went to this Trial Lawyers College in 2001, and I got involved in something called psychodrama, which sounds scary, and it is.
It kind of sounds scary, and I don't ever want to be in one.
Right.
Psychodrama.
And I didn't either. In fact, if I had a car at this ranch in Wyoming, I would have left. But I didn't have a car. I was dropped off in the middle of Wyoming with people I didn't know and encouraged to get up and explain to this group, show this group the pain that I was experiencing. And I did that by trying to understand my spouse at the time. And through this process, I realized and came to really understand that this woman that I loved, that was the most self-confident human being I'd ever met, really had some insecurities. And this wasn't about me, it was about the issues that were in her life before I ever got involved with her. So I got to understand, and I let go of a lot of rage, a lot of anger, a lot of hate, and I could come home and I could forgive, and we got a divorce and I moved on, and I have a wife and 3 incredible kids now. But I was able to get in touch with the things that were preventing me from being fully human.
Wow.
And that was the best training I could have ever got for death penalty work. Adriana, the people that I represent have done some awful, horrific things.
Right.
This hand has shaken hands with hundreds of murderers.
Wow.
And in order to do this work and do it and be able to go home and talk to my kids about the work I do, I have to understand not only what they did, but why they did it. So just as I was trying to explore how my marriage fell apart, I have to explore, how did their life fall apart? What is it about their life, mental health issues, drug abuse issues, generational poverty, generational mental health issues and abuse and imprisonment? How did that mold this person? Because I believe killers aren't born, they're made. So understanding their story and being able to tell it in a human way is how I think I got the best possible training to be a lawyer that practices death penalty work. But it all starts with me. If I don't know what's broken inside me, and I can't talk about that honestly, I can't do it for my client, and I can't expect the jurors to understand him in a way that I understand my own shortcomings.
Oh, that is amazing. You know, it's conversations like these with lawyers like you that really make it easy for me to defend lawyers. You know, when I'm in a room and somebody says, "What do you do?" I teach lawyers how to use the computers. I hate lawyers. I'm like, no, lawyers are amazing. And it's just stories and people like this that really humanize the lawyers. I don't know if you've ever thought about that, but you are really doing the profession a favor by talking so openly, not only about what you've gone through, but how you help your clients and how you deal with. Because I'm sure everybody says to you, how do you defend someone who's done something so horrific? And then you've got to go down this whole road, which I hope you never mind doing because people need to hear it. So, tell me.
Yeah, I teach at the law school here. I teach trial advocacy at the University of Akron School of Law, and I've done so for about 4 years. And, I tell my class, we're not going to have a book. We're not going to read. We're going to get up and we're going to do it. And these are the things that we work on in our class. What is it in your life that's getting in the way of you being the best possible lawyer, the best possible human being you can be? Let's identify that. Let's give it a name, and let's figure out how we can use it to serve us as opposed to the other way around. So law school, for some reason, tries to strip you in some sense of your humanity. And I see my role as a professor, as a teacher, as a trial lawyer, to reinforce how important being in touch with your own humanity, your own vulnerabilities, your own frailties is really the path towards success in the courtroom.
A theme that keeps coming up during my LawTech Connect episodes, apart from Renee Stackhouse, is everyone who has come on has defined themselves as a teacher, whether outside of your professorness. So yes, you're literally a teacher, but whether it was teaching my clients about what they're going through, or teaching my clients about the business that they're trying to get into, or in your case, not only teaching your clients and their families about what they're going to go through, but also just, I am sure, teaching other lawyers how to be the type of lawyer that you are. And you must be a great dad too, because it just must be, you must be able to take all of this experience and pass it on to your kids. And that's another theme that I get every once in a while is parenting by going through all this. A question I thought to ask you, back to the death penalty cases. So when you go in, your goal is to not let them get killed. So is the goal then, you've done some really horrific things. You have to pay for what you've done. So you're going to spend your life in jail? Or is it, depending on the case, well, I can get you off the death penalty, but I can't get you out of jail? Or have there been times when you've just, or prison, when you've thought, I can go all the way with this. This person can just be completely freed? Or is most of them just, they're going to end up in jail and just going to avoid death penalty?
Right. Every lawyer's nightmare is an innocent client.
Oh, that's
right?
such a great statement. Every lawyer's nightmare is an innocent client.
Yes. And
So
an innocent
true.
client who's facing death. And I've been in that situation. I've
Oh,
represented
man.
men who I believed and I knew in my heart
Yeah.
that they were innocent. And it is an incredible burden that takes a toll. And
Yeah.
it's not. But there are those cases, and there are other cases that the evidence is overwhelming, and the goal is just to save this person's life. The difficulty in the setup of the trial of the death penalty, however, though, is it's in two phases. The first phase is the guilt innocence phase, which looks like a traditional trial. Was the light green? Was this a 40 caliber? Was it a 45 caliber gun? The jurors deliberate, they come to a unanimous conclusion, and they say, yes, guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, or no. We've all heard about that in trial work. The difficulty and the difference in death penalty work is if your client is convicted and convicted of the things that make him eligible for death, you have a second trial called a mitigation hearing. And it's at this hearing where you now have to convince this same jury that said your client has committed these horrific acts that they don't deserve the ultimate punishment. So it's this very different world where you're mitigating the act. Mitigation is something that lessens the moral culpability of a guilty killer. It's not an excuse. It's not a justification. And people are hungry for an excuse or a justification. But what you're feeding them is the facts and circumstances that lessen their moral culpability. So you can say to them, this is a broken human being who got to this place through failures of the system. The child protective system didn't protect them. The school system did not protect them. The social network that should feed hungry children didn't protect them. And this is what we've created. We all bear some responsibility for this human being. And getting that message to the folks who just voted that your client had committed these horrible acts is a very different skill set than just trying to prove that the ballistics and the DNA don't amount to proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
Oh, so stressful. I'm getting hives just thinking. I mean, I've gone through every emotion with you. Okay. I've cried. I've had goosebumps twice. I'm getting hives. I've been happy.
Well, let me share one more thing. See, you are the perfect juror. You are the person I look for in the voir dire. If I see someone who, when we start talking about this, is doing this and this, that's the person I want. The person I don't want is who says, yeah, I can do this. I don't have any problem. I can sit through this. I can look at these horrible videos and watch those autopsy, and I can make that decision about whether this person lives or dies. What time do you want me to start?
Right.
My job is to find the person who is uncomfortable, horrible juror.
Yeah.
And I find that person who was uncomfortable and I make them more uncomfortable. I take this moral decision and I don't minimize it. I blow it up I put it in their lap, and I force them to face that uncomfortableness, because in that uncomfortableness, there's something in you saying this is wrong, right? Mm. And that's what I have to find. I have to find that spark and nurture it and allow it to grow, and give that person the strength to emerge from a courtroom of 11 other killers who want to say to you, how could you do that? How could you walk out in that courtroom and look at the victim in the face and say, you're not going to impose this punishment? What is wrong with you? Wow. That's a tough role. So yeah, I have a tough job, but that juror's job, I have to show them the way out of that courtroom with a life verdict.
Amazing. Tell me about Micronesia.
Yeah, Micronesia. I had no idea what or where Micronesia was prior to.
I'm a geography major, just so you know, and I don't know where Micronesia is.
Yeah, it was somewhere far away. I knew that.
Right, super far.
So I was appointed on a federal death penalty case. We've been talking about state work, but I was asked to be learned counsel around 2016, which, as we know, coincided with the Trump administration, who took a very aggressive view on the federal death penalty. So I got a call from a good friend of mine, Matthew Rubenstein, who runs the Death Penalty Resource Council, and said, we need federal death penalty lawyers. And I said, Matt, I'll give you some names, but I've never done one. He said, you've done enough state work, you can do this. And I said, I don't think I can. He said, you're the perfect person for this job.
Confidence.
So I was appointed to represent William Nelper in Nashville, Tennessee. William was a part of a motorcycle gang called the Mongols, and there was an allegation that several people were killed. One of them in particular, because the gang believed that he was a snitch and he was cooperating on other gang members. Wow. So the federal government was seeking the death penalty. My client, William, was in the Army and had served in the Army along with his wife. And a lot of the folks in the gang were ex-service members, which was really kind of telling. There was a brotherhood that they experienced in the Army and in the Corps that wasn't there in civilian life, and they were looking for it. And a lot of these folks had some unresolved trauma, had served in Afghan, had served in Iraq. And they found each other, and they found a way to heal through drugs. And this connection
doesn't sound like healing to me.
Formed that bond. It was a very bad combination.
Yeah.
But we were representing William. We had to be able to tell his story. And his story started in Micronesia. He was born there and graduated from high school there and left at the age of 19 with his high school sweetheart. And they both came to California, joined the Army. And then ultimately he was transferred to Fort Campbell in Tennessee, or in Kentucky, and settled down there. So part of your job as a trial lawyer in the death penalty work is to go back and look 3 generations backward from your client.
Interesting.
Are there generational issues of mental health, substance abuse, physical abuse, violence, incarceration? And we told the judge, look, I can't just send a subpoena to Micronesia halfway across the world and get my clients' school records and hospital records. We need to go.
Wow.
And the judge approved that. So we got funding for myself, my co-counsel, our mitigation specialist, and our client's ex-wife agreed to come along with us. We didn't pay her way, but she served as a translator.
Oh, excellent. Yeah.
So I flew 32 hours to Micronesia and spent 10 days there interviewing my client's friends, his family members, making video recordings, talking to the police officers, the mayor, the people that knew him, collecting records, and understanding also the culture, because where we grow up and the culture we're influenced in helps form us as human beings. So I really needed to understand the value system of his culture and his island and how that impacted him in this horrific capital federal murder trial. So I got to go to Micronesia, spend 10 days there and do some really cool work. And
he did not get sentenced to death.
That's correct. Yeah, we were able to convince the federal government to drop the death penalty and not seek it. It's a sad story, however. About 2 months after we got back from Micronesia, we got word that they were not going to seek the death penalty, but we also got word right around the same time our client had been diagnosed with testicular cancer.
Oh.
And he lived about 6 months, but I got to give the Department of Justice and the United States Attorney's Office in Nashville some credit. They saw how horribly he was suffering, and they agreed to a compassionate release, and he spent the last 2 months at home on house arrest with his family, got to see his granddaughter born, but he passed away before that case ever came to trial.
Don, I cannot tell you how fascinating this conversation has been for me, and I am sorry to see it end. But before I let you go, tell everyone a little bit about your law firm and where they can, find, friend, or follow you in case they want to learn more about you or your practice.
Yeah, my law firm is Malarcik, Pierce, Munier, and Will. We're in Akron, Ohio, on the web at ohiodefensefirm.com. We are a small boutique firm that does mostly criminal defense work, state and federal. I've had federal death penalty cases in Detroit, Dayton, Nashville, New York City, all over the country. And we specialize mostly in white collar federal criminal work in addition to the death penalty work.
Don, thank you so much for your time today. It's been
Thank
a
you
real
so much.
pleasure. No, thank you.